everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. In this video we're going to be talking about these three phrases: hour is not yet, inherit the earth, and out of great tribulation, and how many General Conference talks these show up in between 1942 to present. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you end up liking it. Make sure to leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also make sure to share this with anyone that might find this interesting. So I want to go over first the scriptural source where hour is not yet and out of great tribulation come from. For hour is not yet, we find this in Doctrine and Covenants 1, verse 35 and 36. For I am no respecter of persons, and will that all men shall know that the day speedily cometh, the hour is not yet, but is nigh at hand, when peace shall be taken from the earth, and the devil shall have no power, or shall have power over his own dominion, and also the Lord shall have power over his saints, and shall reign in their midst, and shall come down in judgment upon Idumea, or the world. Okay, so this is second coming scripture. And then, of course, we got Doctrine Covenants 58. Right after these verses, it starts talking about the saints are to prepare for the marriage of the Lamb and the supper of the Lord. So this is the context of these scriptures. You cannot behold with your natural eyes for the present time the design of your God concerning those things which shall come hereafter, and the glory which shall follow after much tribulation. For after much tribulation come the blessings. Wherefore the day cometh that ye shall be crowned with much glory. The hour is not yet, but is nigh at hand. Okay? And then for out of great tribulation, we have Revelation 7. This is the chapter that talks about the 144,000. It talks about them first, and then it talks about a numberless multitude. And that's what's being talked about here in verses 13 and 14. And one of the elders answered, saying unto me, What are these that are arrayed in white robes, and whence came they? And I said unto him, Sir, thou knowest. And he said unto me, These are they which came out of great tribulation, and have washed their robes, and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. Alright, so let's take a look at it. Okay, let's just start scrolling up. I figured that inherit the earth would kind of go along well with this, because we know that during the millennium, it's going to be the righteous that inherit the earth, at least those that are at least living a terrestrial law and a celestial law. And then after that, after the millennium, it's going to be the celestial law-abiding saints that inherit the earth. But okay, so let's look. Okay, so we don't see much of out of great tribulation being talked about here so far in the 40s and the 50s, but with these other two phrases, it's coming up pretty frequently. Have a little spike right here. Let me remember these. So the middle is inherit the earth. So we have a little spike in 1964 with inherit the earth. Okay, and then just like all the other search terms, there's just a lot going on, a lot being talked about in the 70s, especially the mid-70s. Okay, and now for out of great tribulation, now that doesn't show up until 1996. I find that kind of odd. For this entire time, they're not talking about out of great tribulation. Okay, whatever. And now we start seeing some big white gaps over here for hour is not yet. Before that point, in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, there's not a whole lot of gaps, maybe a couple years at most, 2-3 years. But then all of a sudden we have a big gap for the hour is not yet between 1981 and 1991. For some reason, it just suddenly dies. And you can see how much it was brought up before that point. Again, it was brought up, probably on average every year and a half or so, if you were to take all these years. Okay, and then for inherit the earth, there is also a somewhat correlating gap that starts right here in 1981. Odd. Okay. And then there's kind of a spike right here, or like a cluster in the late 80s and then early 90s. And then, 1996, then we start talking about out of Great Tribulation. And not only do we start talking about it, but there's kind of a clustering right here. Okay, and now we're just seeing a bunch of white space. Now we're just seeing a bunch of white space. Okay, and now here we are at the present. Okay, out of Great Tribulation suddenly is starting to cluster again. So out of Great Tribulation, we have a cluster within the last couple years, and then a big old space. You have to go all the way back down to the late 90s when there's another little cluster, and then before that, there's nothing. There's nothing at all. Okay, so only in the late 90s, as we lead up to the beginning of the millennium on the Gregorian calendar, and then this most recent cluster, which of course happens 2 times in 2020, and then you have, starting in 2016, this little cluster right here. We also have kind of a cluster going on, relatively speaking, compared to the rest of its history here, of Inherit the Earth. So at the same time that out of Great Tribulation starts popping off, we have Inherit the Earth, which is happening at about the same time, even a little bit earlier in 2012. Now, the really interesting thing to me is that we don't hear again from the hour is not yet. We don't hear of it again after 2004. 2004 is the last time that we hear the hour is not yet. And I think that that's interesting. This is a big gap. This is a big, big gap. And again, let's just pay attention to this one column. Column D, hour is not yet. So we go through this whole gap back down to 2004. Okay, we have some gaps here. And then it's actually solid and very common, especially from 1981 going back. It's just brought up all the time. And then suddenly it starts to die, and then it just completely dies after 2004. So, and then correspondingly, like I said, there's all this white space, and then suddenly there's a talk about Inherit the Earth and out of Great Tribulation. Just more evidence, I think. More evidence of where our general authorities' minds are at, I think. And I think that because they're putting it in their talks and they're telling it to us. And when we tally it up, I really feel like it tells a story. This one right here, I think, is pretty stunning, you know? Because you can look at it this way, okay? You can look at it this way. Starting in the 40s, the time is not yet, the time is not yet, the time is not yet, oh, the time is not yet, it's not yet, it's not yet, it's not yet. Which is interesting because the thing they have to realize about the 70s is that this is the time that they're talking about everything that has to do with the second coming. But they're also, at the same time that there's all this commotion about the second coming, they're also quoting the time is not yet. Okay? But then, all of a sudden, it just disappears. And then there's a spike in the last few years. If you were to look at the entire my entire spreadsheet here, you would see, well, in fact, let's expand it out right now. Let's see. Let's unhide these columns. Okay, you can see here, there's just like this big old supercluster, not seen, nothing, the likes of which have not been seen since the 70s. But this time, in contrast to the 70s, there's no more hour is not yet. So you get what I'm saying? Down here, go to the 70s, boom, big, huge cluster, but at the same time, also hour is not yet. Come up here to the late 2010s and early 20s, there is no hour is not yet, but there is a huge increase in second coming talk. So make of that what you will. What I make of it is they're finding it no longer appropriate to quote scriptures that say the hour is not yet. Because guess what? I think that the hour is here. I think the hour is basically here. What hour is here? Well, let's remind ourselves. For I am no respecter of persons, and will that all men shall know that the day speedily cometh, the hour is not yet, but is nigh at hand. So let's just cross that out. Let's say that, because it seems like the hour is here. So the day speedily cometh, because the hour is here, when peace shall be taken from the earth. I don't think anyone would disagree that peace has been taken off the earth recently. And the devil shall have power over his own dominion. Does anybody dispute that out there? Does anyone dispute right now that peace has been taken from the earth and that the devil has power over his own dominion? I think so. And then immediately after that, and also the Lord shall have power over his saints, and shall reign in their midst, and shall come down in judgment upon Idumea, or the world. And let's remind ourselves of D&C 58, 3 and 4. So what hour seems to be here? You cannot behold with your natural eyes for the present moment the design of your God concerning those things which shall come hereafter, and the glory which shall follow after much tribulation. So it seems like it's talking about after the tribulation and the second coming. For after much tribulation cometh the blessings. Wherefore the day cometh that ye shall be crowned with much glory. And then we don't have to read this last part, because this is the hour is not yet, but is nigh at hand. So it seems like after much tribulation, the tribulation that we're going through right now, cometh the blessings. Wherefore the day cometh that ye shall be crowned with much glory. That's how I see it. That's how I see it. That's how I see it. Let me know what you see. Let me know what you think. Okay? And we'll leave it there. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe. Like this video if you liked it. Make sure to leave your thoughts, opinions, any additional information in the comments below. Also, make sure to share this with anyone that will find this interesting. And I'll talk to you guys later.